What's going on, folks? Ted from Nerd Immersion here, and we have a series over the past couple days of new videos regarding Vecna from the Wizards of the Coast YouTube channel. One of them is a trailer for the book. This is something I don't think we've seen before. We've seen this book's coming out, interviews or deep dives with the developers on one thing or another, everything you need to know about X book, that stuff we've seen, but never a trailer. So we have Vecna, Eve of Ruin official trailer, where I hear Neil Newborn, who is, for most of you, probably will know him as Astarion in Baldur's Gate 3, is the voice of Vecna in this trailer. We have a Who Was Vecna video, and then a Monsters, presumably monsters within Vecna, Eve of Ruin. So I thought we could just go ahead and watch these videos, see where we're at. So let's start with the trailer.
What if you could have your heart's deepest desire? The divine power to transform your life for the right price. An eye for an eye. Flesh for a crown. Wretched mortality for glorious eternity. Rise with me. For who can stop a god?
All right, that's a pretty sick trailer, and that was definitely awesome. So, and again, Neil absolutely crushed it. So let's go and see who is Vecna. Now that we've kind of heard a little bit about his trailer, let's see who he is. Man, that is so
Vecna has
loud.
no limit on ambition, because at the start of this adventure, Vecna is already a god. But that's not enough.
Yes. Yes.
That level of ambition is what terrifies me about Vecna.
I'm sure there's a cautionary tale there and a moral one too, that absolute power and all of that. But yes, his ambitions are limitless and never satisfied. He's like, I was a wizard. I had great power, but that wasn't enough. So I had to overcome my mortality and become a lich. Well, I guess being a lich isn't enough. I have to not only be eternal, I have to be all-powerful and all-knowing. So I'm going to become a god. Okay, now I'm a god. Well, what's next?
Yeah.
And that's what Vecna, Eve of Ruin drills down into. And folks might be wondering, well, how do you fight a god? I mean, aren't gods basically indestructible? Well,
Yeah,
in
typically.
Vecna's case, and I'm not giving anything away here, if you want to achieve even higher, sometimes you have to give something up. You have to spend some currency to hit the next tier, and so Vecna's kind of doing that. And so there's this window of opportunity where if you're careful and calculating and you do everything right, you can step in and boom, kick him in the butt.
How do you write a genius-level threat like Vecna? And also, how do you fight?
Oh my goodness.
Because this isn't the first group of adventurers that Vecna has dealt with.
This is not his first rodeo, Todd.
There is probably a big hole in the ground where many adventurers did not make it.
Oh, Vecna delights in just being able to disintegrate.
Right.
You know, weird,
Lovely
all of
pile
that.
of dust, yeah.
Yeah, it's just, I can imagine Vecna just dotted throughout Greyhawk and dotted throughout the various realms that Vecna has lived in are all of these just little piles of adventurers who dared to oppose him. Right. Well, I think that one of the biggest keys to portraying Vecna in an effective, scary way is to keep that threat of Vecna looming large over the characters and the events of the story, but to have him in the background, off camera, doing things that are affecting the entire world or all of the worlds, and having that just permeating all of the experiences that the characters have. That isn't necessarily him just showing up and popping up and going blah and then running away, because that's not scary anymore.
Yeah.
If Vecna shows up every 20 minutes and just goes, "Ha, you'll never stop me," and then teleports away, like that's just gets silly. It gets silly. And it's hard to take that seriously after a while. We talked to DMs about having visions appear that the characters see when they dream, or there are times when there are links to Vecna Flare for various reasons. involving the plot lines.
That is really interesting to think about, right? Because, like, again, the popping up and being like, blah, you'll never stop me is very, like, cartoonish. It also reminds me very much of Venger from the D&D cartoon, how he would just, like, show up and do stuff, and then they'd be like, go away, and then he would basically leave. So, yeah, it is interesting because I am curious to see how they're going to try to tell us how to play this. When, again, as Todd pointed out, like, Vecna is super powerful and, like, genius level. So it's going to be a tricky adventure to run.
And to essentially have that a sense of doom and a sense of, Vecna is unstoppable. This is, the world is about to become irredeemably evil and scary. And having flashes of the things that Vecna is doing, is wanting to do, and just reminding characters that this is what reality will be if he's not stopped. And it's going to be very soon, unless something happens. The characters rise to the occasion.
But you will very much be in a position to have to face Vecna.
Yes. Oh, that's true. Oh, yeah. You absolutely fight Vecna. You absolutely come upon him while he's weaving his ritual. And you see that right in front of your eyes.
If you make it that far.
It's true. It's true.
You may not.
You may not. No, and there are more than there's more than one character who is assuming that the characters will never get as far as they do on multiple different steps of this adventure.
There's some fantastic art that gives me like a feeling of Vecna's background. This is not just about what
Is that Vecna on the
is
right,
about to
I'm
do.
guessing?
It's about who Vecna
That's maybe
has
Cass
To
on the left.
understand the villain, you must know where the villain came from, and what makes them tick, and all of that. Yes, there's some wonderful bits of storytelling woven in about the history of Vecna. Was he always a bad guy, or did something kind of turn him on the path of evil? It was a great opportunity in the art to show different versions of Vecna over time. Like we largely know Vecna as the emaciated, lich-like being with the missing eye and the missing hand, but he was human, or more or less.
Those are the moments I very much enjoy. I think I quite enjoyed Stranger Things' take a little bit, especially showing the human version of Vecna in that show, of like this eerie kindness but deliberate nature in how they spoke.
It's definitely
How
Vecna.
measured
They're zooming in on him, and then purple and
not
gold.
the fall, but like the ultimate
Right.
incarnation of evil.
Yes, that history gives you a sense or an anchor on which to sort of base a character.
Yeah.
Like if you're an actor and you have to play Vecna, which a DM is in essence, you're looking at, understanding their journey and understanding what they are is very important. Like Vecna's a wizard.
Yeah.
That means he's educated in terms of magic. He's obviously probably spent years and years and years reading books and spell books and learning to master his craft. One can easily imagine that person being articulate and thoughtful because they've been surrounded by lore and they've had masters who have taught them this very, very difficult art to master. And so it takes patience, it takes time. He's not a warlock. He's not a sorcerer. He is a wizard. And that means a certain thing. And that gives you clues on how to portray him.
What do you enjoy about Vecna in particular? Because you mentioned this has been in D&D since the beginning.
What I enjoy about Vecna is he's got some definition, but he's also an enigma. And as a DM, I can have a lot of creative license to kind of portray Vecna however I want. There's all kinds of aspects to secrecy and mystery that are bound up in this character that I like. Plus, he's got an eye and he's got a hand
Right.
that are artifacts and are very powerful. And the characters can actually get a taste of Vecna's power by obtaining these things.
And how did those get separated from Vecna?
Through
Probably
Vecna's
willingly?
inability to get along with other people, basically.
His poor management style.
Yes, he was. Vecna is many things. He was not a great manager of people. And one of his most trusted lieutenants and henchmen, Cass, who would later go on to become a vampire and a villain of his own,
I didn't know
didn't
that.
see eye to eye, as it were,
I knew he wasn't great. I didn't know he became a vampire. That art was phenomenal, too.
with his boss. And an altercation ensued, whereupon Cass deprived Vecna of one hand and one eye. and those became artifacts in the game.
Always a rough time when a player attaches
Yeah.
one of those things.
And when you go back and you look at the lore of D&D, it's actually the artifacts that sort of pre-existed everything.
Right.
The Eye of Vecna and the Hand of Vecna were artifacts in the original D&D game, absent any knowledge about what Vecna really was or who Vecna.
Oh,
status
that's
was
really
so
cool.
the eye and the hand came first, actually, and then Vecna fleshed out afterward.
That's really cool. And actually a really interesting concept for your game is the concept of like writing an artifact and then just kind of seeing where it goes. Obviously, you might have that weird thing where if the player you're trying to like, it feels like you're trying to fit into a mold that it wasn't designed for. I think we've definitely seen that in certain, popular culture media where like they decided, like they had an idea or like a loose idea, and then as time went on in the series, they're like, oh, this does that now, and it's like, well, that doesn't really that doesn't really fit with the story you already told, but okay. So as long as you can manage that, the concept of an artifact informing hit lore further down the road is pretty cool.
Can you imagine designing the Hand and Eye of Vecna as just magical items for D&D at the very beginning, and then all of a sudden, Stranger Things, right?
Right.
All of a sudden, all
Yes.
these other shows
What a weird journey
Yeah.
that went on to get from these two artifacts, just with this name attached to them, to this entity in this TV show.
Just remember when you're designing a magical item for D&D, you don't know where that road's going to go for your career or also for fiction, I guess, is the warning sign.
Right, because D&D is a shared universe.
Yeah.
And stuff that's created early on gets picked up and reused in other products. It gets incorporated into people's campaigns, and it accretes new lore as it carries on through time. So I marvel at stuff that maybe I created 30 years ago that still has some gravity and has actually gained gravity and is used in people's games or has cropped up in adventures. But you never know what it's going to be.
For those that don't know, what is the Cult of Vecna? What is their purpose?
So the Cult of Vecna, they're all throughout the multiverse. Vecna is all about being the god of secrets, and he's all about extracting power from powerful secrets. And the Cult of Vecna buys into that to the point that they are themselves very secretive little groups that worship Vecna, but also are about finding the inherent power in secrets. And that manifests all throughout D&D's history with people and cults who are worshiping Vecna and trying to extract those powers of secrets. And in this case, the manifestation of that is that they are literally using the power of the secrets and the power that the secrets have over the people who either hold them or that the secrets are about, and using that to funnel the energy into Vecna. And Vecna's got this very, very powerful bomb almost that he's weaving in a specific place of power and is about to detonate and remake the multiverse.
The thing I love about Vecna is that he is your quintessential, just big, terrifying bad guy who wants to remake the world for no noble purpose. He wants to remake the world because he wants to be in power.
Mm-hmm.
And God, sometimes it's so satisfying in a game where you can just get to explore the depths of your imagination and really explore what it means to be a hero.
Yeah.
To that point, sometimes it's just refreshing to just have a bad guy be evil, right? Now, I'm not saying that there's not something inherently interesting and fun about the justified villain, right? The villain that became a villain for, what seems like a noble reason. Something happened to them, their family, whatever. It jettisoned them to villainhood. Someone like MCU Thanos, who, again, when you read into it too much and kind of look at what the power of the Infinity Stones can do, you could shoot plot holes in his argument of killing half of the universe to provide resources for the other half. I mean, you have the Infinity Gauntlet, you could just make enough resources. Either way. But, his concept of, wanting to non-biasedly end half of the universe to make sure that the rest of the universe can live on and prosper so that no one goes hungry, no one, whatever. Okay. like that's a justifiable to some degree concept for a villain, but sometimes it's just refreshing to just have them just be the worst and they are evil and you are just a good guy fighting a bad guy.
In when you're exploring those things, getting to fight against a bad guy who is just wholeheartedly, unabashedly,
Oh, well, there you go.
brilliantly evil, it's just so much fun and so cathartic. Uh, as a DM, I love Vecna because while he is this unabashedly evil, maniacal villain, he is a very clever villain. He does not run headfirst into things. He is very thoughtful. He is very much like moving those chess pieces on the board, and it's always fun as a DM to kind of get into that mindset and see those pieces moving, and sort of like figure out like what his plans are, what his backup plans are, what his backup to his backup plans are. It's just so much fun. I love getting to play with villains like Vecna who are just this kind of looming threat. And their threat can pervade from a low level where it's just like, oh, you're engaging with like some cultists on a lower level, to the scale that we eventually get in this adventure where the entire multiverse is at stake. He is this beautiful kind of recurring background threat that just you can just lay threads of and get glimpses and pieces of his plan, but not quite understand the full scope until it's almost too late and you are running out of time. There's just such a wealth of possibilities in the ways that you can approach Vecna and strategize into how to take this incredible big force down. And I can't wait for folks to get their hands on this. It's going to be so good.
All right, that was a little bit about who is Vecna. And then we have another shorter video here called Monsters, which I'm assuming is going to talk about some of the new monsters in the book. So we'll listen to that too. Let's speed this up to
You worked on a lot of these monsters.
125.
I did. Each of the chapters has its own theme and then its own monsters that fit that theme. So I think when we went through the whole arc of the story, there ends up being something like 40 monsters in the back of this.
Yeah, there's
40 monsters is not a small amount by any means, so that's exciting.
quite the compendium, and some of these monsters are existing monsters that are very unique to those settings that we've seen before, whether it's Spelljammer or Ravenloft or Eberron, and it's like exciting to like have that reference. But we're seeing a lot of new monsters.
And when you say new monsters, that falls into two types.
Yeah.
There's the type of monsters that are just brand new that nobody's seen in 5th edition before, and then there are a few monsters that existed in earlier editions of the game that have been updated. I did a suite of monsters that when they first came out, they're actually Tannery before we were calling them demons.
Oh,
but
yeah.
now they're a new to 5th edition type of fiend.
Can you tell me about some of those monsters, like in detail, or will that ruin things?
I can tell you in detail. It's fun. At the risk of getting a little bit spoilery.
Right.
One of the sub-villains that you go up against is a demon lord named Miska, the wolf spider, who is a champion of chaos. And the fiends that serve him are these absolutely horrid-looking wolf-like, spider-like things called the spider fiends. And they come in various levels of, several of them in a horde to shape-changing, mind-affecting types of very powerful.
These are very fun. If you're looking, I would check out my Rod of 7 Parts campaign. We fought against, that was like the ultimate big bad at the end of the game. Miska the Wolf Spider. So yeah, very cool stuff.
Leaders, and you get to see quite a lot of these spider fiends in the part of the adventure where you're going up against the forces of Miska the Wolf Spider.
Nice. What other monsters did you help work on?
Some of the monsters that have been pulled from previous sources, and some of those that have been pulled from previous sources aren't taken exactly, but they're taken thematically. They're like, oh, here is a type of monster that appeared in Ravenloft, for example, and here's another one like that you might want to know. There's a type of monster in Ravenloft. They're just relentless stalker. They're kind of horror movie monsters that you can't get away from. They're always one step behind you.
Yeah, I love those.
And there are a couple of different monsters like that that have been published. Well, there's a new one that is different than any of those monsters, but fits the story of that
So like a Michael Myers kind of a situation. That's pretty cool.
Ravenloft chapter.
Nice.
A lot of the monsters that are in here were designed by some of my peers, and it's just a delight when I was going through these monsters. Some of the things that are just really inventive that come out of my peers' mind, disturbing even, that come out of here. But,
there are a few times that some of my friends have designed things. I'm like, okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Spider dragons and things like that.
Yeah.
This book has a lot of monsters in it where two independently tough types of creatures have been mushed together to be some extra horrifying thing, and that is a delight to see.
One of my favorite monsters that we get to encounter pays homage to the very classic stone juggernaut. from Tomb of Annihilation. We've kind of updated it, upgraded it, but you will find the Granite Juggernaut roaming the depths of Earth as, depending on which path you decide to take through one of Asarak's tombs, it might just crush you. We'll see.
Without spoiling
cool.
too much, there are a lot of very famous D&D NPCs that are helpful, or also villains that end up in this multiversal trek.
In addition to a bunch of really awesome monsters, we do also have stat blocks for some wonderful classic and iconic D&D characters, including Illustrial Silverhand, Tasha, a new version of Strahd that is tied to the Death House, which is very exciting.
That's very cool. Also, canonical stat blocks for Tasha, Illustrial, presumably Mordenkainen.
One of my favorites that is appearing in the book is a new Tasha stat block. So we've seen Tasha before in Wild Beyond Witchlight. We've seen her in her Igwilv form as Zybilna, Archfey of Prismeer. This version of Tasha that's going to appear in this book is a earlier version of her when she was just Tasha the Witch. So it's a little bit lower CR than the one that appears in Wild Beyond the Witchlight, but it is nonetheless still super fun. One of my favorite little Easter eggs in her stat block is that a lot of her actions that are actually in the stat block, a lot of her abilities, are essentially prototype versions of these spells that eventually become her spells in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything.
Oh, nice.
Wow,
You have
very
prototype
cool.
versions of Caustic Brew and a bunch of the other spells that appear in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, as this is the Tasha that was actively working and developing those spells before they were released out to the larger world.
Why are monsters so important to an adventure? And in this one, they're so narratively tied to the adventure.
Oh,
to
the
give you
art
that
is
flavor, 'cause each chapter
phenomenal.
goes to a different part of the D&D multiverse. This is like one of the key ways you kind of show, hey, you're in a different location.
Oh, that's absolutely true.
Dude, the art is so good.
And a lot of the monsters are included because the foes you go up against are thematic to the type of environment that you're in. But a lot of it is not just the foes you're facing. A lot of it is the people that you're working with or alongside in order to complete the goals. If you're in the Mournlands in Eberron, there's going to be a whole lot of Warforged and constructs and things like that. So we're pulling constructs from a lot of different existing sources and adding in new ones. Similarly, if you've got a monster that either just doesn't give up trying to stalk you through Ravenloft, or a vengeful inquisitor who is going to stop at nothing in order to defeat the monsters of Ravenloft. I mean, they give you that same sort of, not just horror feel, but that specific type of being hunted horror feel.
Right.
The monsters help carry that.
What do you like about this adventure?
I had a lot of fun writing for very, very high level. It is amazing the types of
Far
things that
round.
very high level adventurers can do. Not just the type of abilities that they can marshal, the types of challenges they can overcome. Designing monsters to go toe to toe with heroes that powerful is a really fun part of this design.
Like I said, it all looks good. I'm excited for this release. It is just a little over a month away, so we'll start coverage of that. But yeah, I'm very excited. Also very interesting to see all of the news and videos and stuff that WotC is releasing around this. They're actually trying to build hype for the first time in a long time, so that's pretty cool. I don't know. Maybe I'm completely out, actually, funnily enough, I see on that video we were just talking about, Jordan with the silent PH in the middle is talking about Miska the Wolf Spider. He was the DM for the Rada 7 Parts campaign that I mentioned. So, yeah, I think this looks pretty good, but I'm curious your thoughts. Is it just you're done with 5e, you just don't care about Vecna, or are you on board and excited to see this adventure in its entirety? Let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments down below. I'll see you all next time.